I'm gonna go ahead and start recording right now. Welcome everybody to our 11th virtual shadowing session with Pre-Health Shadowing. I am very excited today to welcome to you Nurse Melanie Jade Boulerice, who is a Canadian nurse practitioner and also the founder of the Nomadic Nursing Agency. Welcome.
So, hi, my name is Melanie Jade Boulerice. I am a nurse in the emergency room at the Montreal General Hospital, and I work in emergency trauma. So we get cases, your typical gunshot wounds, stabbings, car crashes, also your people that are on anticoagulants that are falling. We get a little bit of everything. So what this I've been doing this for about 8 years now. It has been quite a journey. I graduated nursing school and then fell right into the Shark Tank. And I loved it ever since. I'm not sure if you guys watched the show ER back in the day, in the 90s, but that was a show that my parents put me in front of when I was young, and it hasn't left me since. And I've been working in the emergency room. I also worked in psychiatry as well. And then we also worked, I also did a short stay unit as well. And now I own a company called Nomadic Nurse Agency, where we provide a variety range of services at the house. So we provide mobile nursing services at home, provide mobile nursing services in blood tests. We do vital sign checks, wound care, and so on. We also provide pharmacy services. So we go into the pharmacies within the Montreal region, place nurses for, right now it's flu campaign. So we'll put nurses ready for flu campaign. And they'll do also some minor nursing services like ear washes, other vaccines and such. And then after, we also provide, before COVID, we were doing emergency services for events. So when we would be working at, when I would be having, I have a lot of connections in the event industry in Montreal. And I would be placed inside of events to monitor and survey the area until something were to occur. And we would have a team ready on standby. So if you guys know Montreal, if anybody's familiar with it, one thing that's really big here is Grand Prix. We've hosted celebrities here, and Grand Prix was my first contract until COVID happened. COVID has changed a lot of our lives as health professionals, in the sense of when it comes down to how our businesses are run, how the healthcare setting is run, and whoever works in healthcare presently, or as they even touched on it, will understand that it has been very, very challenging. I think we can all kind of agree with that. And then I also offer nurse mentorship and coaching as well. That has taken a hold, given that there has been quite a substantial amount of changes that we've had to take at Nomadic Nurse Agency. But I do teachings for our licensing exam. You guys have NCLEX. Here we have OIIQ, which is for RNs in Quebec. And we have also for LPNs in Quebec as well, that I also offer this service. So there's a couple of things that we do in regards to at Nomadic Nurse Agency. Now, a lot of people are wondering, in Quebec, it's not very typical for health professionals to understand business other than a pharmacist. Now, this is what differentiates the US and Canada a little bit with healthcare. Healthcare in the US, everything is, at the end of the day, it's pretty business oriented. They might get some subsidy from the government, but it's pretty business oriented. In Quebec, it's all government oriented. Government, it controls our salaries, but we have a union. I'm not sure if you guys have unions out there, or depending in which state, I'm assuming, but each union would be variable based on, like, we have a union that will help differentiate our salary, and we have echelons and such. That's how we operate here, and everything is pretty government run. Now, This is good because there's a sense of control as to how much money hospitals are making, and people, the big thing is that they don't want to make money off the backs of people's health. So we don't, which in certain ways are excellent, because, you know, we can go to the hospital and not have to pay a thing. And that there's benefits with that. But one thing that I did notice is that as much as I'm blessed to have free healthcare, there's a tendency to miss out on the value of the professional. And this is my very important piece with that. When you are a health professional, given a fixed salary, given fixed this, fixed that, you tend to be fixed within your standards as a professional. You will tend to be, you will not go outside of that box. But when the government wants you to work forced overtime, when they want you to work, you're expected you to get out of that box. Now, this is probably where there's a little bit of push and pull, and which is why I started my company. Because I feel that nurses in particular, because nurses here, the salary is capped, like unless you start doing injections and stuff like that, which is not the alley that I'm going down right now. But when you start doing like Botox, like it's much easier to get sales on that end and make some better income, because you're injecting people and you charge per vial and plus injection fees, and the list goes on. But when it comes down to working in the hospital setting, there's no such thing as negotiating your salary. Your salary is what it is, and then it goes up based on your year. There's no voice for the nurses. The voice for the nurses are cut, which is another thing. Now, when it comes down to doctors, they have a college that they're appointed to. But the issue with having a college that you're appointed to is that, yes, you have a little bit more freedom, but the college keeps a very close eye on your practice. A very, 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 very close eye on your practice. So when you decide to go, and I'm sure it's like this in the States as well, but you got to be very careful with that. And who are you billing to receive care from somebody? You're not billing the hospital, you're billing the government. The government will be giving you your pay based on how many notes you've done, based on all those things. So that's how the doctors work. But for the nurses, it's salary, and that's it. There's no, other than overtime and shift work, there's no way to expand and grow as a professional. It's very difficult. And private healthcare is not something that is it's a little bit frowned upon in Quebec. And I can speak only for Quebec, but Quebec it's a little bit frowned upon here. And this is a bit of an issue, because when we try to expand and grow and be independent, they put caps on us, they create laws, which creates more friction. And then when we try to ask the order of nurses what we can and can't do, there's a lot of the times we get a no. But you got to find a way to diversify. You got to find a way what's safer, you got to find like, for example, glucose tolerance tests. If you're familiar with that, it's the test that people do, women do when they're pregnant, to see how high their blood sugar goes up. But the thing is that they got to sit in a chair for about 2 hours, and then they retake their blood sugar to see if they're just have gestational diabetes. We can't do that, because if let's say they have hyperglycemia, we don't have technically the proper equipment to take care of the situation, which makes sense, but nor are we given the option to have this material. It's not that difficult. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at as a whole that we need to, how do I say? There's a lot of things that we need to understand, that we need to be more open to the fact that health nurses, I speak mainly for nurses, but health professionals should have health professionals should have options to flourish. Now, we're not talking about making loads of money. We're talking about ways that they can have a lifestyle that of their choosing, right? We want to make sure that they have a lifestyle that they can live happily, they can live comfortably. So with that being said, this is why I created Nomadic Nurse Agency. I want to be able to have create choice for myself, create choice for my clients. Because when you work in public, we call it public sector, which is government. When it's government run, there's not as many choices. It's this is what it is, and that's it. That's the thing with government run. Everything is given a cap with that. So in order to give our people options, because people are allowed to have options, we try to create private healthcare. But when we try to create private healthcare, we try to incorporate primary healthcare. Did any of you guys hear about primary healthcare yet in your studies? No? So, not yet. So if anybody has heard of primary healthcare is where we try to bring healthcare to the front course. So what does this mean? We bring it to the home. Preventative medicine, preventative care, not when the patient has to end up in the ICU costing roughly $700 a day just to be intubated. Let's not forget the PICC line, this line, all these other things. There's a lot of things to consider. So how do we prevent people from going to the hospital and ending their life? How can we prevent that and make people have a more flourish life by preventing illness? That's the biggest question. So, and that starts from caring for your health at the source from home. That means coming home. That means having your vaccines done. That means starting to exercise. That means having blood pressure checks or blood sugar checks, doing your blood work, those types of things. Those are very, very important. So that's what we're trying to push with private healthcare, because our system is designed to push towards a tertiary healthcare. Tertiary healthcare is when you're in the hospital. So how many here really want, I think we have a lot of people that want to go into medicine. How many here are nurses? How many here are nurses? I am. Okay. Okay. Anybody, any nurse practitioners, pre-nursing, planning to go to nursing school? Okay. Okay, certified nurse, but planning to go to med school, doing a bachelor's and master's in nursing option. Okay, perfect. So we have a lot of people looking in nursing or med, or that's in CNA school. That's already a CNA. Okay, perfect. So if you take a look at what do you find now for people that are in nursing school or nurses? What have you found? How do I ask this question? What have you found is, what have you noticed in your system that you find questionable? And I'm not mean by you don't understand it, but I mean I'm not sure if I like this idea, or I'm not sure if this is something that I would offer to my family. Let's see what we have. Or maybe even people who, this is actually something that could be offered to not only, this actually could be a question for everybody. Private insurance costs thousands. Yeah. This could actually be answered. This could be for anybody, whoever's in health. So this is a question for everybody. Nurse Cna Patient Ratio. Yeah. What are your nurse patient ratios? Cost of healthcare medications in the USA, yep. Okay. What are nurse patient ratios right now for COVID, given COVID? Okay, we had 12 to 14 to each CNA. Okay. Pre-nursing, but not pre-nursing, but something in a book for ethics medicine class said healthcare is a business, and I just didn't like wording. It shouldn't be considered a business. It should be care for patients. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one. Couldn't agree more. Because if you take a look at, sadly, it states, yeah, and we in Quebec don't, like Canada doesn't usually agree with that. Emergency room I worked in, I was a scribe. The nurses had 3 to 4 patients. Okay, that's actually not too bad. Volunteering in a nursing home, I did notice that there was only 1 to 2 CNAs section for many residents. Yeah, that's also an issue here in Quebec. Sometimes we have 1 CNA, as we call it, but here we call them orderlies or PABs. We would have 1 PAB or CNA for sometimes 30 residents in an old folks home in a geriatrics facility. Yeah, we would have 1. It was quite, the ratio was quite extravagant, I have to say. CNAs are burnt out, overworked, waiting to even work despite being good experience. Yeah, 100%. 100%. We have a lot of things occurring where ratios are an issue. But one thing that your quality of healthcare when it's free. That's an excellent point. Quality of healthcare when it's free. Why do you say that? Why do you say that? I find that interesting. Free healthcare sucks, to be honest. In a way, yeah. In a way, yeah. You want to know why it sucks? In a certain way, it's good. In some ways, it's bad. In some, you know that you're gonna get care. You know you're gonna get taken care of, but you know it's gonna stop here. Government properly funds it, so it goes well. If the question is that the government actually fund it properly is the next question. There's a lot of things. So when it comes down to, less pay for health professionals, yes. So there's a lot of things that I think raise the questions and raise that aspect of it. When healthcare is free, there is a cap that's given of healthcare. That's for sure. Mind you, the reason why we are healthcare professionals is because we care. So we will go the extra mile just because it's within our heart. It's our compassion. And a lot of us are like that. In all honesty, a lot of us, whoever is in healthcare, like that's how it's run. It's all based on the compassion that's being given. And the government knows that we will give our extra mile just because of who we are. And that's another thing that we need to be very aware of. But when it's free, yes, healthcare is given up to here, but why do you think professionals will stop there instead of going the full extra mile? Some of them will, but why do you think? One of the things I dislike when I work is with doctors get paid more if you see patients, and think that it makes. Yeah. So here's one of the things that I have to mention. When you have something that's free, there's only so much budget for it. There's almost so much stuff that you can give, resources. That's where the issues lies, resources. Now, I'm not talking about resources. I'm not talking about a pizza party. I'm talking about resources of what are you going to do for your healthcare, for your patients. Quality goes down. Quality goes caps at a certain level. Here we have a lot of little clinics that are associated with the hospitals where we're able to give a bit more, but there's always limitations. Okay. Yes, better than going bankrupt because you get cancer. That is another thing. Here in Canada, we do not go bankrupt because you have cancer. There's a couple of beauties to having free healthcare. Mind you, they're getting chemo. They have a lot of funding from private foundations that help. So foundations do help with that type of aspect of things. They'll make a funding for cancer for our cancer pavilions. They'll make funding for our they'll do funding for our what other pavilion? Yeah, for our cardiac pavilions and so on. So there's a lot of benefits to healthcare, but what I'm talking about is the professional. The patient, when it's free healthcare, the patient will get care. Will it be the 100% best quality care? No, but it's not because of the people, it's because of the resources that's given. Give me 1 second. My dog is literally scratching at my door. 1 second. Milo. He's extremely confused today. He's like, I don't know what I want in my life. Like,
so we wanted to segue into a little bit more about your background. Could you tell us a little bit about your education? What steps you took to become a nurse while you were still in school?
Oh, wow. That's a conversation. Okay. So basically, when I was in nursing school, when I started school, and it was 2009, and I was actually a professional dancer at the time, but my poles were horizontal. So we're clear. I was dancing competitively. I used to go to New York to compete. I competed all across Canada. I did a lot of things like that. So that's what kept my sanity through nursing school. And it was super fun because what I did is that it paid for a lot of my gigs. I would teach dance. I get paid to dance, and then I would then work through. I would basically work through do my courses and then go to dance class right after. I do my stage, go to dance class right after. Let me bet you my bottom dollar that I was dead beat tired, man. I was so dead. Oh my God, we got a couple of artists here. See, in science, there are artists, I'm telling you. So yeah, competitive dancing, my God, it's like a thing. But I was on a competitive dance team for years. I taught at a studio. I got platinum awards. I was supposed to actually go down that alley until I started working in the emergency room, which I didn't see coming, and I got the job right away. And dancing is what kind of helped me through nursing school. Okay. Dancing is what helped me create my discipline to and time manage everything. So that was really important when I went when I was in college. We had to everything from 6 a.m. my day was time managed all the way until 10 p.m. So in the morning, I would get up at 6 a.m., let's say. If on later days, I would get up at 8. I would get up and get ready for school. I would try to suck in as much sleep time as I possibly could. I love my sleep. So mornings were not my thing at the time. And once I did that, I would do my day. And in between my shifts, in between my my classes, shifts. I haven't said classes in forever. In between my classes, I would be either studying if I had a moment, or I would be coming up with choreographies. So it depends on what the day brings, really. What was my major in college? Well, we got a lot of questions here. What pushed you to apply? Wow, we got a lot of questions. I love these questions.
We can go ahead and ask those to you either like periodically throughout the session, or we can do the Q&A at the end. It's up to you. So if you want to just continue, we can
Sure.
reserve some time for talking, and then
Sure.
we can orally ask you the questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, perfect. So well basically how my time was managed in nursing school. So nursing school was very had to fit like Tetris, everything. It had to fit like Tetris. Even my boyfriend time when I was with somebody, even my time with even my time with like for myself, even my time with my jobs, it was all of that. So definitely needed some very specific time management. And I tried to get as much courses as I possibly could. And then after that, I went into and then I applied straight for the emergency room after nursing school. Now, how did that end up happening? So how Canada works is that we have this thing called college or CEGEP. Here we call it a CEGEP, where I do my DEC, as we call it in nursing, or my degree in my vocational. That's what you guys call it. My vocation in nursing. And then after I was able to apply as a nurse inside the hospitals here, I became a nurse and I worked at a community hospital. It's kind of like you guys have a county hospital. I worked as in a community hospital, and I originally applied for psychiatry, and then my boss in psychiatry basically told me, he's like, we don't have enough shifts for you, so maybe you can go down to emerge. I'm like, go down to emergency, really? They're like, yeah, you can go down to the ED. I was like, oh, I'll apply, and my boss took me right away. And as soon as I got in there, I knew it was exactly what I wanted. And I didn't, because when I was at that hospital, we had a huge freeze all over Montreal. During this time, it was actually a pretty crazy-ish story. We had an oncologist that bought one of our hospitals, one of our McGill. If anybody familiar with McGill University or McGill hospitals. McGill is a pretty it's like our Canada's Harvard, if you want to put it that way. And McGill and basically somebody bought the McGill Health Center hospitals. McGill Health Center hospitals were bought by this one person by Dr. Porter. Dr. Porter was an oncologist. He bought it over, and he basically said, okay, and it's made up of roughly six hospitals. He took 5 of them or 4 of them and put them all into one area with the Shriners Hospital. And they were all put together. And he made this one big super hospital where it's now the most modern hospital in North America, which is quite interesting. But what he did is that it was all funded a lot of it was funded illegal money, like dirty money. If you think about it, anything that's government run that has a lot of money, you got to be like, where did they get that money? So he got the reason this part is important. The reason why this is important is because he ended up pocketing the money, left for Panama. Yeah, it was a story. He ended up pocketing the money and left for Panama, and he fled there. He had a Swiss bank account. This whole thing that came out of a James Bond movie, and he ended up dying he diagnosed himself with cancer, and he died in Panama. And his daughter and wife had a house in Miami. Everything was seized in Miami. FBI was involved. The RCMP was involved. It was really something. And why does this have to do with me? Is because this caused a freeze in our healthcare system. We could not get a job because the money was just evaporating. So we had no idea where it went. Yeah. The money just was going anywhere. So we had no idea. And I was trying to get a job as soon as I was graduating. I was like, why can't I get anything? Even the housekeepers were losing their jobs. The housekeepers, which is intense. Like when you go, as much as housekeepers, they seem to have a pretty dirty job, the housekeepers have the most valuable job. They clean the hospital. Like, they are the base of the infection control. They're the kings of the infection control. Like, we need them. And when they started cutting on infection control, that's a huge deal. Like, there's one thing to cut on management and nurses, but infection control at your bare minimum, we got a problem and how we see it in Canada. And I couldn't get a job at the big hospital. So I ended up having to go to a smaller hospital, which meant smaller floors, nothing interesting. And all I wanted to do was trauma. So I got a job. At the community hospital in psychiatry, which was enough drama in my opinion, which was a lot of drama, which was a lot of intensity because of the type of patients we would get. We got very decompensated schizophrenics. We had 1 month. It was just manics on the floor, manic bipolar on the floor. It was, no one slept for a month. Like, it was something else. We get a variable type of patients. We get our depression, we get our suicidal, we get a lot of things like that. But when my time was up, I went to the ED, and then that's when I saw this emergency room was more, with it being community-based, it kind of touches a little bit on everything, but how our healthcare system is designed in Quebec is that our community hospitals don't specialize in anything. So if, let's say, for example, somebody has an aortic aneurysm that's ruptured, we'll stabilize them, but they have to go to the educational hospitals, which is they go from a county hospital to a university hospital, as you would call it, I guess, in the States. And we would be working on the patient to try to stabilize as much as possible and then bring them out. So we got the chaos and we stabilized until we bring it to there. But when I started working in the emergency room, I did not go for my bachelor's right away. I needed to pass my licensing exam. Now, this part is probably the part that inspired me the most to do my company. Now, the biggest challenge for my company was, like, I wanted to do something more than what was given because I was blocked from positions because they wanted me to do forced overtime at the hospital, which to me, as a professional, and if you let me know if y'all agree with this, give me a thumbs up if you agree, give me a thumbs down if you disagree. But what I think is that when you're being blocked from a position, it's blocking your success. It's blocking your pathway to excel in your career. And that, to me, I'm being blocked because they want me to do forced overtime, to burn me out. I know I'm a good nurse. Don't question me on that. I know I'm good. I know I'm the shit. I know that. Don't get me wrong. I know that I can pull. I know that I can go hold a heart and give it cardiac massage. I'm not worried about that. What I don't like is you burning me to my last end because you think you need me that point. Well, I don't need you as much. That was my choice. And this is what I think you guys should understand. What is your choice? You don't have to say yes to every single thing that they give you. You have to do your job. You have to make sure that patient care is given. You have to ensure that your license is protected. You have to ensure that you are safe to provide care. You have to ensure that you understand what you're doing to provide care. This is beyond important. If you don't understand what you're doing, take the 5 minutes and look it up and come back. That's my job. But what my job is not to do is to be told I have to work extra hours because they're missing somebody because somebody else didn't do their job, or somebody else didn't think of budget, or somebody else. I'm not management. I'm here to provide excellent care to the best of my abilities, and that is it. But I'm not here to be burnt out while doing so. Okay? And when I was blocked from the position of being a liaison nurse for psychiatry, it wasn't my dream job. It was a job I would like to touch on to excel, but I was still offering shifts in the emergency room. It's not like I was going to be stopped. I was going to do part-time liaison nurse for psychiatry and part-time emergency room, which is already what I was kind of doing, but it was just more official. And then I was blocked. And when I was blocked, that's when I understood how they saw my value. And that's when I said I need to start questioning my value and be like, okay, what is my worth? What is my worth to these people? What is my worth? Am I just a number? And sure enough, I'm just a number. So when they said to me, we need you to do more overtime in the emergency, I just acted like I never heard emergency, and I just did overtime for psychiatry. Of course, I was pulled into the office saying, how come you're not picking up any extra shifts? I was like, well, my position is this, right? My position is 3 days a week for emergency. Yeah. So why are we having a conversation? They're like, well, I'm like, well, I don't understand why this conversation's happening. Because while you're picking up extra stuff in psychiatry, I'm like, I'm not allowed. Well, your post is not there. Yeah, but I choose to pick up shifts in psychiatry. Well, I was blocked from that position that I was supposed to do. So, and they can't tell me anything. They can't let me go. They were right. Then no one told me that. And here's the thing: no one could tell me it was not a conflict of interest. I was offering my shifts both places, and I was getting calls for those places. I put myself off the overtime list for emergency. I put myself on the overtime list for psychiatry, and that's it. That's it. You got to know your value, because if you don't tell them what your value is, they will never respect you. And ever since then, I have bosses congratulating me. I have old bosses telling me how great I am. I have all these old bosses kissing my ass like they never did before. So it's things that are super important. Setting your value. At that time, they probably were like, oh, I'm frustrated. But then they end up respecting you at the end of the day. So I did my overtime in psychiatry, but then I got approached by a friend to help her with her licensing exam because she failed her licensing exam. Now, the story with the licensing exam, like NCLEX, how many of you guys have done your NCLEX or in the process of studying for your NCLEX? If anybody here is doing the process of that. So we have a licensing exam called OIIQ. And the OIIQ exam is probably, if you think your exam is tough, our exam is tougher, and I'll tell you why. Because not only do we have to bypass all the questions of like 4 answers are correct, which is the most correct, we also have to get mixed up in translation. Things are not properly translated because this exam is a French exam that was translated into English through Google Translate. It was not very well translated, which is an issue. And when Anglophones are reading this exam, it doesn't make sense. Yes, RIP to translate, exactly. So it was a big issue with translation for the exam. So I ended up having to do my exam 3 times. And what does this mean? Well, after the 3rd time and you fail, you're not a nurse and you can never be a nurse. You need to pass your exam 3 times here. I think at the NCLEX, I think there's a little bit more chances, but us, we have 3 times and we have to pass it 3 times and we have to pass with a 55 minimum. Now that 55, I got to tell you, it's a very hard 55 to get, especially if you're Anglophone. So it took me my 3 tries, my first 2 tries. Guess what I got my first 2 tries? I got a 54. Both times. Yeah. Annoyed much. I was very annoyed with that. So I did this exam, and then obviously I was in burnout because not only was I trying to pass this license exam, I was dealing with my own personal trauma at the time. And it was all around the same time of the exam. So it's too much. It's way too much. At the end of the day, I had to make a decision. You're going through a struggle. you're going through a struggle personally, going through a struggle professionally, how do you take those struggles and manifest it? It was so not easy because it wasn't like, luckily I had my parents were able to support. They weren't financially deprived in that area. Like we're not super rich, but my parents were able, if I say, listen, I need to pay for my exam, it's $700 for my exam, they'd help me pay. Mind you, I got lucky. I was able to pay for all three. I got really lucky with that. But I was able to get some support. My boyfriend at the time was extremely supportive as well. I ended up having to go to therapy, and I had to be accountable for my actions as well. You have to always be accountable for your actions, for your feelings, and understand it and embrace it, because you need to find a way to recycle that struggle, whether it be professionally, spiritually, personally. You need to take that energy that's going to the gutter right now. You need to take it and literally find a way to recycle it and say, I'm going to make this better, without it being toxic positivity. You need to take that energy that you have and say, okay, I'm not passing my exam. It's my second time. I have one more chance, or else I'm never going to be a nurse. And I just did all this nursing school for what? And then I'm going through a trauma. I have to find a way to deal with it, or else I'm going to be mentally messed up for the rest of my life. Literally, that's how it could have ended up if I didn't take care of it properly. Knowing the way I know psychiatry now, like, if you don't take care of certain things, you can develop personality disorders, PTSDs, and all these things. If I don't take care of that disbalance, not me spiritually, that disbalances me personally, this disbalances me everywhere. It's just a big Jenga that's gonna fall. So how do I take that? So I said, first things first, I need to go to therapy. I need to deal with my issues. I need to deal with it. I didn't have the biggest issues in the world. There's some people but I had issues. I had a big trauma enough for me to say I need to go to therapy. Then after I did, for my exam, I did tutoring. But what I knew I had to do, I needed to take time off. The next exam that was coming up, I knew I wasn't ready. My mental was way too clashed. So I asked for a sick leave from work. I asked for a sick leave for the exam, and I declared burnout. I need to find myself again. You need to take the time to find yourself when you're lost. You will not be able to find yourself when you got this project, this person's problems, that person's problem. Like you won't be able to figure that out. You need to take the time to rebuild your blocks and build your castle. And that's what I did. I created myself a base. And then based on that, I realized once I put my proper mindset to the proper things, my health got better, my mindset got better. I was able to absorb more material, like for school, to help with the exam. I was able to perform excel at work. People even started noticing a difference in my patient care at work and the way I am with people at work, in the sense that I'm able to set my boundaries, but be happier and be more professional and provide excellent care at the same time. Like at the beginning, when you would have your first trauma or your first case, you would be panicking. And keep in mind, when I was doing my licensing exam, I was allowed to work in the emergency room. And one thing that I always remembered is that I failed my exam those 2 times. I had 5 different bosses in 5 years, just so we're clear. That's how crazy the turnover was there. But each boss told me the same thing, which I was surprised. They wanted me to stay in the emergency room, even though I didn't have my license. Now, what does that mean? It means that I can practice under another license of a nurse, but I'm able to still work. And usually what they do, they bring you to the floor. You have to go work on the floor. But they were like, no, we want you here. We know you're good at this. So I ended up staying there because I had people that also believed in me as well. I got lucky with that. Some people are not as blessed to have something like that, having people believe in them like that. I luckily did. So when that ended up happening, I was able to get my exam. I was able to manifest my mind. And then when somebody comes, next thing you know, somebody's asking, hey, I need help for my licensing exam. Well, when that day came, I ended up having one person and then having 5, and the success rate for the LPN's licensing exam, it was 1 out of 20. That was the passing rate. One person out of 20 people were going to pass. I got all 5 of those girls to pass, which, coming from the girl that couldn't pass the exam after her first or second try. So it took a lot of perseverance. And when I figured out unlocked the codes to the exam, if you want, I figured out what they were looking for. I understood the exam better and all these other things. That's when I started realizing that made a difference. And I started sharing my methods to manifesting their career. And I started teaching. I had an office, I had all this stuff. And when I got my license exam, I started manifesting everything that I did. And it was all about planning your stuff. It was all about structure. It was all about understanding where you are at mentally before you could ever move on to another project or anything else. Because you could have all the knowledge in the world. You can have all of the money in the world. You can have anything that you want, but if your mindset is not there, if you're not into it, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You really need to make sure that your head game is in line before anything else. You need to be okay before that. And this makes such a big difference. Yes, it is mental health. It is mental health, 100%. It's 100% mental health. Our mental health is the most important. And what helps with our mental health? Our physical health, exercising, proper eating habits, all these things to be a normal human. But we forget because we're trying to take care of other humans. Don't we? That's something that's super important. We're so dedicated in school to focus on the other human, that heart, that liver, that intestine, that patient. We're so focused on that we forget to pee, for God's sake. Think about it. It's true. We forget to pee. How do you forget to pee? Like, it's insane. Nurses even don't, I only ate at 5:30 p.m. tonight. 5:30 p.m. tonight. It's right now. What time is it in Canada? It is 7:50 right now. I ate 5:30 p.m. tonight. It's I didn't have the time, but when I got the time, I made sure it's something I enjoyed, and it was a salad. I had to eat a salad because yesterday I had Chinese food. But anyways, we had to be very mindful of how I'm eating every so often. But I make sure that at one point, got to make sure that your health is okay. Because for me, my mental health, what got me through nursing school was dance. Dance pushed me all the way through, even though I was dancing hours a week, 14 hours a week, when I was told that I shouldn't be dancing that much a week by my nursing teachers. When I was told by my nursing teachers, I can't make this day, I can't make this thing, or I had to postpone or something like that because I actually had to go to work. And they were like, oh, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a professional dancer. And I explained, I get more detail than just that there. And they would say, oh, I thought you had a real job. What? What's a real job? Last time I checked, I enjoy my job and I don't have to work at, McDonald's, or I don't have to work. Don't catch me working at McDonald's. I have one girlfriend that would be dying to work at McDonald's. It's hilarious. She's a nurse with me and she's like, I would want to work at McDonald's. I was like, she just wants to flip. I don't get it. I don't get it. But I got lucky. I didn't have to work a stressful job. I didn't have to work with bosses that hated me or that was making my life difficult or giving me shitty shifts. Or I had bosses that wanted to see me excel. in dance and professional. Like, they wanted to see me everywhere. They got me gigs for professional gig. Like, I got music video gigs. I even got a job when I even got a gig when I was in Miami like when I was 18. Like, I got a lot. It was great. And when I realized what I needed, it was my dance that I needed back. So I started dancing again after I dealt with all of my burnout. And it was the best like recovery for my physical self, for my mental health, and then making sure everything's organized and making sure my life is in check before I put anything else. I did so much. I ended up teaching over 200 students over the course of a year to 2 years for the licensing exam for LPNs. I ended up teaching a course of around 100 students over the course of, 200 students again, separately for the RN program for the licensing exam. And I've been teaching it ever since for the licensing exam. And I'm holding it at John Abbott College, which is the English college for nursing students, which is in Quebec, is probably the top English college for nurses here. And I'm proud. It's the places where I graduated. And then after, I excelled by going to get my bachelor's online through St. Francis Xavier in Nova Scotia. Now, what I loved about St. FX is that I was able to manage my time well because everything was online. So this online Zoom stuff is very familiar to me before COVID. I was able to manage all my time. I was able to start running the tutoring company during that time. I was able to slowly start opening my mobile nursing service company. I was able to start, oh my God, what else was I doing? I was doing everything at the time. I was able to start nurse mentorship programs. I was able to work in the emergency room. I was able to teach. I was able to do everything all while doing my bachelor's. And now it's just a matter of excelling of where I want to go. But it was a lot of time management that I had to put in, and a lot of dedication, and a lot of, I got my own back. As much as I had a lot of people support me, which I got to consider myself very lucky in certain ways. I had to have my own back before anybody else could have mine. I need to make sure that I was able to have my own back. So my schooling was super crazy, but once I started excelling in work and such, what became crazy is that I got a job at our level 1 trauma center, and I started working there as an emergency trauma nurse. And now I can work anywhere in the world, given that I have the amount of experience under my belt in this trauma center. And I can take care of, we've had cases from gunshots, stabbings, we've had domestic disputes, we've had variations of falls, we've had a lot of things. So when it came down to the cases that we've had, we had a lot of, when COVID happened, we had a lot of, we do get COVID cases, but I think we're all familiar with what we're seeing on COVID and everything like this. But the biggest thing, the cases that I saw, was a lot of, and what's been going up more is traumas. I've been seeing a lot of gunshots. Like we in Montreal, we had our own fair share of, we had our own little George Floyd moment, where a couple of days ago, we had a Black man who was going through mental crisis. He was holding a knife and he was shot by police. Where yesterday on Halloween night, a 24-year-old white male was running around in Quebec City stabbing people. And he had altercation with the police, and he still has a pulse. He's still alive till this day. Now, keep in mind my nationality. I am part Trinidad and I'm part Quebecois French. So I'm a mix of both. So it's a little bit of a tearing between my two worlds a little bit. but it's very scary to see the difference of what could happen. And we had cases like that. We've had cases where when COVID first happened, there was discrimination towards Asians. We had where the Asians committing suicide. We had violent hate crimes toward Asians. We've had our craziest case recently, the recent one that I can remember was we had 5 gunshot victims coming in all at once. I was running a trauma. I was so exhausted. I was like, okay, we're done. Have I N95 max? And I'm like, oh, I'm fed up. I'm like done. And my colleague looks at me. He's like, Mel, we have a gunshots coming in. I'm like, okay. It's like, we have 5 of them. I'm like, you're lying to me. He's like, no, we have 5 gunshots coming in. I'm like, okay. ETA. I was like, they're like 2 minutes. I'm like, Lord have mercy. So we called a code orange, as we call, which is I'm not sure if it's the same codes in US, but it's called it's a natural disaster, an external disaster. So I had to call a code orange, where we had to call all the trauma teams, all the trauma surgeons, all the trauma, all the nurses. We had to call everybody. And our trauma docs that we have, if anybody knows hockey, it's the same doctors, trauma surgeons for the Habs. So the Montreal Canadiens, which they all came in. So we all had to come in, and we had to run one after the other after the other. 3 out of the 5 had to go to the operating room, which is already a pretty big deal. 3 out of the 5, which means that we had to make sure that we had enough staff for 3 operating rooms, plus make sure we had enough staff to roll for 5 patients in the emergency at the same time. It's insane. So I ran 2 of them out of the 5. I had 2 of the most violent ones. Sorry, not violent. I had 2 of the most critical ones. One of them was the bar owner, and the other one was the shooter. Yeah. The bar owner was super, he was so calm, so nice, he was doing good. I did my job so good. I give myself a pat on the back. The team did a good job. The nurse in charge did a good job. The trauma surgeons did a good job. The residents everyone killed it. We really did an excellent job given the circumstance. I get chills just thinking about how amazing we did. It was great. We had bullets going through people from their intestines, crossing their intestines and going to their chest. We had some serious shit coming in. And we ran one after the other, so smoothly. Smooth sailing, no issues. I take care of the owner of the bar. Comes in, says, "Hi, what's your name?" Put him on the cardiac monitor, get a blood pressure on, get the O2 sac going, start getting an IV. First thing you got to do is get that IV in, so you make sure that if they're bleeding out, we can at least start mass transfusing them with more blood. And then once we have that, we have another 2 or 3 IVs going. We can start massive transfusing, or we can at least bring them to the other section if they're stable, so that they can mass transfuse over there. Next, get the other one. Okay, repeat. Put the patient on the cardiac monitor of blood pressure, O2 sat, and make sure you have a set of vital signs. Plug in 2 or 3 IV lines, and then, okay, this guy's not doing well. Oh, he's coming in and out. Operating room. We don't have time for CT scan. I ship him up to the operating room. Now, how do you take care of somebody that's the shooter? How do you care for somebody that's a shooter? You just do. You have to treat them under oath. Exactly. At the end of the day, you are not there to determine life or death. It's not your job, nor is it the job of the state. I'm sorry, I'm against the death penalty. Nobody has the right to choose whether people live or die. Nobody's God. Nobody is God to determine that. You are there to take an oath to save a life. You save it, you say how you killed it, and then you go on to the next because you did your job. When you get that, think about how you got that IV in that difficult vein. Think about how you did your job so well on this person. You don't have to know what their story is. You just need to know that you did a good job and that they're grateful, and that's all that matters. You don't need their backstory. But I knew this guy's backstory. He was the shooter because he was cuffed. So even if they are doing something to harm themselves, or when I get the drunk driver that's high on cocaine that just knocked out 3 rollerbladers and knocked them so like they have to go to emergency surgery because they hit their femur so bad that the femoral artery is bleeding and they have to go to the operating room. When you have people like that, you just do your job. And what do we call that? That's called vicarious trauma. You have to be accountable for those feelings that you're going to have. If I want to strangle them, it's not my time to strangle them, but I got to remember I'm going to feel something later. I need to make sure that I'm good. I need to make sure I got to mental check myself. Just like how I checked myself during that exam, just like how I checked myself during my trauma, just like how I checked myself during my St. FX exams, during to get my to graduate. Just you gotta check yourself. Make sure that you're okay, because if you, in order, how do I explain this? If you are, what makes you okay? What makes you okay is that you're able to do your job with ease. Other people don't shake your world and what they're doing, but karma will get to them. You just got to do you. Do you, boo-boo, is very applicable in these situations. You need to be able to do you. And whatever, somebody telling you, oh, you're not going to make it. Oh, you're not going to be able to do it. Oh, this is too hard. Oh, they have a comment and an opinion.
Thank you so much. That was amazing, and just listening to all those different stories. And we want to go ahead and transition at this moment to the Q&A portion. And Raphael is going to ask us our first question.
Can you talk about your most interesting case that you've had?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is probably I have had 2. This one I'm going to tell you. This I'm going to tell you the heart attack one. So we had a guy come in with a heart attack. Typical meet the criteria MI, myocardial infarction textbook, other than one thing. Came in with chest pain, sweating, difficulty breathing, gray colored, like looked like a textbook sign of like myocardial infarction. Comes in, okay, we're going to put him on a stretcher. We're going to do an ECG. Okay, we're going to put him on in the cardiac section. And the nurse was ready to go. Everyone was in line, ready to go. Like there was nothing wrong with with the department at all. This guy all of a sudden goes flatlines. No, actually goes into VFib. Sorry. He goes into a fatal arrhythmia. Goes into VFib. He goes into VFib. Okay, we got a shock. Clear, we shock him. We try to get an IV line. This guy, for some reason, we couldn't get an IV line on him. It was so tough. And we've gotten IVs on very tough people, but this guy, he was just like such a super hard stick. We get it. We shock him. We clear. We're about to get another IV line. He wakes up. He wakes up and starts punching us. Like swinging, throwing at us. Hardcore doing throws at us. And when his heart exerts too much, he goes, and he falls back. Start CPR, okay, shock, clear, get an IV line, okay. He wakes up and boom. This guy was a typical 56-year-old man that just had a heart attack. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing. It was just he just got a heart attack. He was used to be a cop. He just literally tipped over. This guy, as soon as we shock him again, he wakes up after that. throws off the IVs that we had on him and starts punching us again. He does not stop. He does cycles this about 3 to 4 times of dying, waking up, punching us, dying, waking up, punching us. Did I get PTSD? Not really, actually. I found that a really interesting case. But the patient did not, apparently the patient, I ended up having to go to the cath lab with the patient. I ended up having to bring him, I ended up having to bring him back, put him to ICU and all that stuff. He ended up being fine. He came back 2 weeks later with chest pain, and everyone was freaking out when they showed up. So we tried to sedate him, but this guy was actually big enough that like when we tried to sedate, like it wouldn't work until like he got enough, until he had a nice snow blow of meds. Like we had to blow him. We had to snow him, as we call it. We had to snow. But yeah, that was one of our most interesting cases. I had also had a case where a guy, this is just, the situation was funny. In Montreal, we have our airport, and right near, our hospital is near the airport. This guy was flying from Mexico to Spain to die. He was in the ICU for 70 days. His coworker found him like unconscious in Mexico, in his apartment in Mexico. His family, he was 55 years old. His family was like, okay, we're going to bring him back to Spain to die and bury him and all that stuff. This man started decompensating in the air ambulance, and we had to land to our small hospital. He ended up stopping at our hospital. This guy had every problem in the book. Not only did he have diabetes, his liver looked like it was shot. Fully swollen, ascites. We ended up putting chest tubes in his thorax, and about both sides, I think a liter came out of both sides, which was stopping his heart, causing a pericardial effusion, which was pushing, like mimicking a pericardial effusion, pushing on his heart, causing him to go into like an arrest. He was bleeding out somewhere, where his hemoglobin just completely shot down. He ended up dying in Canada. It was insane. That was a pretty crazy one. But we also had like the crazy penis pumpers being stuck to people's pelvis and all that stuff too. Yeah, and all of that.
Thank you for that. Can you describe what your day-to-day life is in like the hospital and also like Nomadic Nurse Agency pre-COVID and like during COVID?
So my day-to-day life pre-COVID was a lot of in dealing with pharmacies. My dog just walked in. He's like all nosy. My day-to-day life pre-COVID was dealing with pharmacies, making sure my nurses were okay, filling up any extra shifts in the pharmacies, and of course picking up shifts at the hospital. I do part-time at the hospital. I do 4 12-hour shifts in a row at the hospital. Then I'm off for 10 days, but those 10 days I'm running the company. And Nomadic Nurse Agency before that was mainly Nomadic Nurse Agency was mainly pharmacies, and we were preparing for the event industry and preparing for Grand Prix and the big parties for the summer. And we did a lot of we were trying to do a lot of connections in PR. And then after, when COVID hit, we became very mobile. Emergency services died. We became extremely mobile. And we started taking on our contracts through our pharmacies, and pharmacies started sending us patients that needed blood tests at home, services at home, and that's when we took that on. And now I have, before that, at the pharmacy, I had nurses inside the pharmacies. They got forced to work over full time, or some of them went on mat leave and they couldn't work with patients anymore. And now those people they're working either at the hospital, but now I have a new staff that's going mobile, and then they literally just go see patients and they provide nursing services and such. And then the next step is I have nurses in pharmacies preparing for flu season, so we provide nursing services there.
Thank you. So the next question is going to be a 2-part question. Was it hard to adapt to a fast-paced environment in the ER? And then also, do you have any tips for students who are interested in working in emergency medicine?
So Fast pace in ER, honestly, I was somebody that was always pretty fast paced as a person. So that helped. But you got to first things first, find the calm within the chaos. And that starts with you. That way you can control your environment. Don't panic. One thing at a time, and eventually you'll speed up. Eventually you'll get faster. Know when you need help. It is okay to ask for help at the beginning, especially. And your team should be asking you, do you need help? Are you okay? You should have help. And if they don't ask, you're very much allowed to ask for help. You have to that's why accountability in the emergency room is super important. Be accountable for what you can and cannot do, because if you do not accept that you can't do something, you can kill somebody because you think, oh, I can do it. No, it doesn't work like that. Your patient comes first. If you cannot meet that standard that moment, stop. Ask somebody else to take care of it. That would be my best recommendation. And that's also something that I recommend for people that are going into emergency medicine is if you grasp that factor while you're in school or that's going to make emergency medicine so much of a breeze, because get ready, emergency medicine is not traditional. It's not something that just where you have a schedule. It's not, your schedule will never be normal, ever. And you have to rely on continuity of care. Your team has to be much more connected to you.
Thank you. Why did you decide on pursuing nursing when dance was a big portion of your life?
It's a very good question. Dance was a huge portion of my life. I loved it. I did not see in Montreal, dance is not very excelling, other than if you own a dance studio. It's not like Los Angeles or Miami or New York, where you can grow and dance behind Beyonce. Like, we have a Montreal dancer that danced behind Beyonce. She was in a lot of her music videos and all that stuff. She was this if you look at Beyonce's, do you remember that? What was it? It was her Black and Pink album. That album back in the day when she just had Black and Pink with Partition, it was in there. This girl was in a lot of her music videos and 7-Eleven and all those things. And she was from Montreal. She moved to LA. But when it came down to excelling in dance, there's a big cap, and it was very hard. And at that time, I didn't see myself leaving the country yet. And then when nursing came with a bigger opportunity, that's when I took it. But I tried to keep it as part-time as I could, tried to continue with it, but it was just very hard. And I got so much trainings and got ready, and I needed to excel in my job and in nursing. Plus I started Nomadic Nurse Agency, which took so much of my time. And when I first started tutoring nursing students, I was also mentoring. When I was mentoring the nursing students for the licensing exam for LPNs, I was also dancing. I was also working in emergency. I was also starting my bachelor's. Like, it was crazy. And I was able to time manage everything. But at one point, you have to know when to give up something and when to find it again. That's it.
Thank you. So our next question is going to be, did you take any business classes to help open nomadic nurses?
It's an excellent question. And no, I did not. I did not take any business classes. And the reason why I didn't do it is because I was surrounded by a lot of mentors and who gave me resources for this, and these people didn't do business classes. So for example, I did my business classes I have a business mentor who helps me mold my business accordingly and helps me diversify and helps me with my account, shows me who to talk to for accounting, shows me who to talk to for marketing, PR, business development. I have departments for that because my specialty is nursing. I took my craft and decided to manifest it and expand on it. When you can make a business out of anything that you love. Money will come after, but if you love what you're doing, you can manifest it and make it something super real. So what I do recommend is, if you're going to open a business, if you're going to pursue into business or owning your own practice or having your own clinic, understand the domain of accounting, understand the domain of business, understand the domain of marketing and PR, but make sure you learn it and understand it, but hire experts if you need. If you take a look at someone like, if you give an example, look at 50 Cent. Okay. 50 Cent is somebody that, has he really acted in his life? Not much, other than the recent times. He was a rapper at first. Before that, he was a drug dealer, but he understood the frames of all that, and he scrapped the bad parts and manifested into something amazing and made a business out of what he has. Same thing with Ice Cube. Same thing with people in entertainment. Like, that's what a lot of people do. They take something and they take their passion, they manifest it, and they just hire the people that are really good at that thing. I can do my own accounting, but I'm not excellent at it. I know somebody else that I can hire that can be that can be excellent at it. Well, I take the time to master my craft. That's the important thing. Don't forget about your craft.
Thank you for that. How are you able to balance your personal life and your work life, since you're dealing with like a lot, like the nursing agency and like working in the hospital?
Time management. You gotta schedule time for everything. Like, schedule everything to the T, and make sure that you can delegate tasks to people that you can trust. Like, so for example, right now I'm in this session. I have my assistant, Olivia, overseeing any type of operations issues because she can take care of it. Like, it is what it is. There's also things like, there's things like you gotta be careful who you delegate to, but you gotta make sure that you delegate to people that can understand you and that feel your passion. Like, Olivia has referred a bunch of people to work for me and has taken care of the company like it's her own. Like, she literally quit her job to come to work for me. And I didn't ask her. I was like, no, you don't really have to do that. She was like, no, I want to. I see something growing with this. And she made it, and she's been helping me ever since.
That's really cool. So our next question is going to be, what steps did you take in order to start working at the ER? Like, how did you end up there?
I threw myself there, seriously. And I literally threw myself in the ER. I went into psychiatry, and then once I got into psychiatry, I was told like there was no more hours for me in psychiatry because there was so much steady staff. And then once there was so much steady staff, my boss said, like, maybe you should try the ER. And I says, oh, I'll try it. And it just ended up there. Not everyone is recommended that they do that, because ER is a shark tank. But I always saw myself there. I didn't see myself on a regular for a very long time. I saw myself in a shark tank. So you also have to be comfortable in your skin, and you also have to know what you accept and what you not accept. I could have very well went into the shark tank and hated it and said, okay, I need to get out of here. But I got lucky. I actually really enjoyed what I was doing, like really enjoyed.
There's a question in the chat. Do you think someone with depression or mental illness in general be able to handle nursing as a job, or any health professional jobs?
Yeah. It depends if you can, you have to learn to manage your time, need to learn to make time for you, which is important. You need to learn to make time you need to be accountable for your feelings. You're feeling a certain way, stop, feel the feeling, get up, and get to the next part. You need to know what your boundaries are. You need to know what you can and can't do. You need to be okay with you can and can't do. I've known nurses that were bipolar that worked, and they were excellent nurses. I know nurses that were suffering from clinical depression, and they worked very well. Some of these people are the best nurses because they're able to relate to their patients much better. Mental illness is something that's stigmatized, and it shouldn't be something that if you're a nurse, if you're mentally ill, you shouldn't work, or you have a mental-ish health issue and you shouldn't work as a nurse. No, there's people with Crohn's who are immunocompromised that shouldn't work, but they work because they love what they do. They're able to relate with their patients. It's very ADHD. There's so many nurses that have ADHD. So many nurses. And guess where they work? The emergency room. They work in the emergency room, and they're excellent because they just need to they're in the emergency room. They find the calm within the chaos. They learn how to find the calm within the chaos. Autism, it really depends. But yeah, autism I never seen, to be honest with you. Maybe it's the Asperger's, but I haven't seen. I haven't noticed. That's also another thing too.
So our next question is going to be, did you ever feel like there was a moment that everything in nursing school got very difficult? And then if so, what kept you motivated to keep going?
There's so many times that in school got difficult. Didn't mention this part. I failed one semester of nursing school. And look where I am now. Doesn't mean shit when you fail something. You know what it means when you fail something? It means that you learned something. It means that you need to learn something. And when I failed that one semester, and it was the beginning, because when I was in nursing school, I was 17 years old. What do I know at 17 years old? What do you know at 17 years old? Nothing. You don't know much. You're learning. You don't even know anything about yourself. You're developing. And when I was 17 and in nursing school, there were certain things that I knew I wanted to be a nurse, but there were some things that I couldn't put my finger on it. And I ended up failing one semester of nursing school. And it was the best lesson I have ever learned. Because I was upset at first for failing. I was embarrassed. But I learned that but when I failed that semester, I went back and I excelled. And I knew everything. I was more motivated, and because I knew so much and I was motivated and I was right, I was able to kind of manifest that because I didn't let myself get down. I just said, okay, well, I got to pick myself up and go. I can, like I says, I got a degree to get, I don't see myself doing anything else. I better get this done. And for me, it worked. For me, it worked. Some people think, well, I got to get it done because I have no choice. If you really feel like you're here's one thing I put in my theory. If you're pushing too hard, eventually that fart is going to be a poop. You never push too hard, because what's going to happen? You're just going to shit everywhere. It's true. Listen, it's the best analogy out there. It is the best analogy out there. Let's get real here. You push hard enough to the point where if you push something that hard enough so bad that you don't like, eventually you're just going to be shitting everywhere. So you have to make sure that you push yourself to do the best for you. And if you feel like it's meant for you, then go for it. But if you're unsure, if you're really not clear, listen, I had nursing students that went out and became teachers, and they're like, I'm in love with this. This is my life. So, yeah.
Another question in the chat is, have you ever disagreed with your supervisor, and what did you do in that situation? And do you have any advice for future doctors or healthcare workers that might be dealing with this?
So I think, okay, you can always disagree professionally. There's a way to disagree conventionally. Now, and that's what you're trying to be taught. There's times that I disagreed with my healthcare, my supervisor, but I'd be like, I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure about that. And I had one professor that told me like, oh, you're wrong with this, or you're wrong with that. And I was like, what do you mean I'm wrong? Like, are you sure about that? And they're like, And because I didn't come at them with a defensive answer, they actually went to go research their issue, research the topic, and they went, oh, you're actually right. I'm sorry. Like it's true. Any teacher you deal with, like you got to be able to say, oh, well, this is what I looked up here. And they says, oh no, and they say, oh no, that's incorrect. Oh, well, can you show me the reference, or can you show me this, or get them to teach you, because at the end of the day, that's what they're there for. They're supposed to teach you. But when we talk about a disagreement in the sense of like the way they're handling things or the way their professionalism, listen, at a certain point, if it's not hindering your marks, if it's not hindering your mental well-being, if it's not hindering, just know what not to do. Get by and do it. But if it's getting to the point where it's hindering your education, then you take it up a notch and you tell them, listen, like this, I don't agree with this, this course of action. Can we sit down and talk about something? And if they don't want to talk to you about, then you can obviously go to the supervisor or go to the dean or whoever you need to go to discuss it. And again, never go anywhere, whether you go to your professor, the dean, your colleague, if you're dealing with a colleague or your own supervisor at work, don't ever go to them just to yell or to be upset or to say, listen, there's an issue. Come with a potential solution. And if you don't know what that solution is, just say, listen, is this a good idea? I've just tried my best to think of something. This is not my expertise, but I don't think this is working. Maybe this idea will be better. Always come with a potential solution, even if the idea may be shit. At the end of the day, you're trying to do better. You're trying to make things better. Show that initiative.
Thank you so much. So at this time, we're going to wrap up our Q&A session with one last question. And then if you have any other advice for us, we would love to hear it out. So our last question is going to be, sorry, let me scroll a little bit. Do you work with any physician assistants? What do you think of them compared to NPs?
To be honest, I don't deal with physician assistants, speaking of which, however, I've heard great things about the profession. NPs are growing in Quebec. They were hidden quite significantly in Quebec for quite some time, and they still kind of are. They really, in Quebec, they really like put a shadow on the nursing profession. So they what I mean by hidden is that they keep us, we don't have a voice as much as like doctors would. Like in the States, like where you guys have exposés, seminars, like you have all these things for nurses. Here we don't have anything like that. Our union is kind of like our support. We don't have nurse mentorship. We don't have Nurse Mo. We don't have Queen Dort. We don't have people, nurses that we can look up to in that way, that can provide us with retreats and things like. We don't have any of that. Nothing. Here, I'm trying to create that. I'm trying to build that. You can do things like that.
Do you have any last minute advice for pre-nursing students and pre-health students?
When everybody feels like that they're going to fail, failure is not a bad thing. Failure is the biggest lesson that you'll ever learn. And why is failure not a bad thing? Failure is what meets the eye to society as something that's negative, when really it's where you'll learn the best lessons. Failure is what brought me here. Struggle is what brought me here. Failing one of my nursing semesters was the best thing that's ever happened to me. My struggles after nursing school, failing that license exam twice, is what motivate me to create my exam, create my mentorship. All these things that failure has brought me, I wouldn't be here today without it. So embrace failure and don't be hard on yourself if you have failed an exam or fail this or fail that. You need to embrace it. You need to love it and need to learn from it. And that's an okay thing.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for giving that wonderful talk and taking your time to like talk to us and like give us advice. Please stay, students, for Nina will talk about how to get the shadowing certificate and how to do the post-shadowing assessment. And if you live in the US, please use the right to vote if you can, for those who can't. Thank you.
I'm voting because I'm part American.
Yes, and tomorrow is the last day to vote, so please use your right to vote if you can.
All right, students, I invite you all to whip out your phones really quickly and scan the QR code on your screens. This will bring you to Melanie Jade Boulerice's page on our website. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you guys can leave a comment and we will share this with her. And just go ahead and talk about if anything resonated with you today, if you had any amazing takeaways, anything that you learned that you would love to share with the rest of us. We would love to hear it. So you'll find this all the way at the very bottom of the page, and we welcome you all to leave a comment. Our next announcement is we are opening applications for all of you if you want to join our student team. Pre-health shadowing is a student-led, student-based team, and we welcome students not only in the US, but in Canada as well, and honestly anywhere. So you guys, it's all online, all virtual due to COVID-19. So you can be a part of our team. Applications are on our website. If you feel like you do not have the time to commit to pre-health shadowing and you still want to get involved, there are opportunities for you as well. We have online opportunities for volunteering where you work on your own time to get as many or as little volunteering hours as you'd like at any time of the day. So you can fit it in between your lunch break, in the morning, right when you wake up, before you go to bed. And so this is a great opportunity for you, especially to show your initiative during the pandemic. My next announcement is to follow us on Instagram to get all of our updates for the upcoming talks, as well as free resources for students. If you go to Melanie Jade Boulerice's post and you spell her last name letter by letter, you will be eligible to be picked for the Spotlight Student of the Session. And the trick to this is you have to make it all the way down without interruption. If you get interrupted by another student, you have to start all over. So this is really fun. Please participate in our challenge. And our Spotlight Student of the Session today is Diana Martinez, who was able to comment Tony's name all the way down on his post from last week. So congratulations. And another announcement with this is just to repost our Instagram stories because our goal is to make sure that pre-health students everywhere have the opportunity to participate in this program. So we really want to make sure that we have everybody knows about this program. This is a free resource for students and we don't want to hide it from anyone. Our goal is to make flexible and accessible learning. So please help us out by posting our sessions so that all of your pre-health friends can join in. Our next shadowing session is tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have researcher Dr. Giuseppe Legname, who is from Italy. So you guys will be joining us tomorrow to discuss his path in current research. And this wraps up our shadowing session. Don't forget to take the quiz at the end of the session. To get your certificate, you must go onto the website, onto our speaker's profile, and click Free Take This Course. You will be led to the module section. Once you get to the quiz, you will have 15 minutes to complete it. And you must pass with a score of 70% or higher to be eligible to get your certificate. Once you pass this, you must go back to the original page and click Finish Course. Once you click Finish Course, you will get your certificate, which may be downloadable immediately, or you can always find it in your profile. If you guys experience any issues or have any questions for us, feel free to email at info@prehealthshadowing.com. And that concludes our 11th session. Thank you again, everybody, and have a beautiful night.